No. 905. North 905 Reed Avenue. She just told me she killed her.
Okay.
She just told me she killed her.
Where's where's?
I don't know. I just checked out there in his bedroom. He is not here.
Okay, what's his name?
She's running out the house now. She's 5.
And is she white, black, or Hispanic?
She's black. She's taking my car, and she's running out the house now.
Okay, what's her name?
Pammy May. Pammy.
Okay, what kind of vehicle is it?
It's gray Jeep Cherokee. The license plate is J-I-G-E-D with
I'm sorry, J-I-G-E
eyes
what?
that look like 2 eyes that look like the Roman numeral 2. She's speeding out of the driveway now.
Okay, give me.
What happened was
Okay, hold on, sir. What's that tag again? What's that tag again?
J-I-G-G-Z.
G-G-V, okay.
And she's headed towards Lockbourne and Reed now.
Did she tell you how she did it or anything detailed?
No. She just woke me up and said she's not here no more. I said, what would you do? What did you do to him? She said he's not alive. And then when I tried to grab the phone to call you, she started fighting. Got up to check his room because I didn't get off work till 10:30, and I didn't see him tonight. I came straight home, took a shower, and went to bed. I didn't even check in on him because I usually don't when I get home because I want him to sleep. And now she's saying she just woke me up and just told me I got something serious to tell you, and I said what? And that's what she told me. She's not here anymore.
And that's a female or a male? I'm sorry.
It's a little
male.
boy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there any other children in the home?
No. She talked about something. She got a plan. I'm not going to jail for her.
Any diagnosed illnesses or anything or anything like that you know of?
She does have depression and bipolar disorder, but she has been taking medicine for it. She's been fine. She's been around plenty of children.
So this is completely out of character for her?
Very much so.
A 5-year-old boy named Darnell had been killed. It happened in his own bed, where he should have been safe. Earlier that night, he had gone to bed with a granola bar and some peanut butter crackers, snacks he didn't finish before drifting off to sleep. It was an innocent act, just a child enjoying a treat. But to his adopted mother, Pammy, it wasn't innocent at all. Pammy had been upset about the snacks. The crumbs on the bed seemed to bother her more than they should have. That anger grew into something dangerous. It was about control, and she was determined to take it back.
This is not like her at all, the person that I thought that I knew.
By the time she acted, Darnell had already fallen asleep. He was lying on his side, clutching the blanket. He didn't hear her come into the room. He didn't know what was about to happen. Pammy smothered him while he was still in bed. It happened quickly. There was no noise, no struggle, and in those few minutes, a mother killed her 5-year-old son. Afterward, Darnell just vanished. There was no trace of his little body, no sign that anything had happened at all. Pammy had hidden him somewhere no one would ever think to look. Pammy buried the truth, both literally and figuratively. Whatever Pammy did, wherever she put him, it wasn't the kind of place anyone would stumble across.
This is Darnell. You love him. Please, bring him home.
Darnell was gone, while the woman responsible carried on as if nothing had happened. Darnell's early life wasn't easy either. Not much is known about his first 5 years, but one incident stands out. It was March 25th, 2022. Darnell was only about 3 years old. That evening, a neighbor called the authorities to report something deeply troubling. The neighbor lived near the family on Buffalo Court in Columbus. They said they'd noticed a toddler strapped into a stroller outside the house. The little boy had been sitting there alone for over an hour, crying and calling for his mother. The temperatures that evening were in the mid-40s, cold enough to make you shiver if you stayed outside too long. And yet, this tiny child was left there with no one around. The call brought both the police and a child services caseworker to the scene. When they arrived, they found Darnell still in the stroller, still outside. The caseworker spoke with Darnell's mother, Letitia Taylor, to find out what happened. Letitia told them she had left him outside as punishment. She claimed it was because he had called her a bad name. She insisted he had only been there for 5 minutes. However, the neighbor's report contradicted her claim. They were clear it had been at least an hour. Letitia's explanation wasn't the only thing that raised alarms. During the interview, she made statements that deeply concerned the caseworker and the police. She admitted that there had been physical mistreatment in the past. What truly shocked them, though, was when she said she wanted her son to die. She even confessed she hoped someone would kidnap him, which is why she left him outside in the stroller. Hearing a mother say something like that about her own child left everyone unsettled. After that, the authorities made quick decisions. They removed Darnell from the home and placed him in the care of Franklin County Child Services. Letitia, on the other hand, was taken to Grant Medical Center. Her statements left the officers to believe she was a danger not just to others, but also to herself. What happened to Darnell immediately after that isn't entirely clear. There's a gap in his story. We know he didn't stay with Letitia, but it's uncertain who cared for him or what his life looked like in the months that followed. That event, though, left a mark. It gave a glimpse into his life, filled with neglect, and a child who seemed to have no one truly looking out for him. As for Darnell, sometime between March and May of 2023, his paternal grandparents, Tawanda and Anthony Baines, stepped in to take care of him. They loved Darnell deeply. He was a bright, bubbly boy, and they wanted to give him a stable home.
He has a bubbly personality. He's always smiling, always dancing.
We just wanted to see him, spend time with him, love on him.
But as much as they cared for him, taking care of a toddler wasn't easy. They were older and struggled to keep up with his energy. Despite their love for Darnell, they realized it wasn't something they could handle long term. But they didn't want to see him end up in the foster care system. That was never an option in their eyes. They began searching for someone else who could provide him with a stable home while keeping him connected to the family. They wanted Darnell to stay close to the family, and they thought they had the perfect solution. They turned to someone they had trusted for years, a close family friend named Pammy May. Pammy had been a part of their lives since she was a little girl, and the family believed she would be the right person to care for Darnell. In May of 2023, Darnell went to live with Pammy and her husband at their home in Reeb Avenue in Columbus. By the summer, they had gained full legal custody of him. At first, things seemed fine, but it wasn't long before the grandparents noticed something unusual. Pammy, who had always been part of family gatherings, birthdays, cookouts, and holidays, began to distance herself. She stopped answering calls and didn't respond to messages. It was as if she had disappeared. They tried visiting her home, hoping to check in and see Darnell. They knocked on the front door, then the side door. No one answered. The silence became more troubling with each visit. Months went by, and the family grew more anxious. They began to wonder if Pammy was trying to keep Darnell away from them. By July of 2023, Darnell's grandparents hadn't seen him for weeks. They had no idea how he was doing or if he was safe. Both his maternal and paternal grandparents decided to take legal action. They filed for visitation rights in court, hoping to reconnect with him, but Pammy made it difficult. She blocked their calls and refused any communication, cutting them off entirely. The family had no choice but to wait for the court to decide. A hearing was scheduled for March 11th, and they held on to the hope that it would bring some resolution. They prayed for a chance to see Darnell again, to know that he was okay. The once close bond they had shared with Darnell felt like it was slipping further and further away. But before his grandparents could get a court decision to visit him and see him again, a tragedy struck on February 14th, 2024. It was early that morning, just after 3 a.m., when police received a chilling 911 call that would change everything. Pammy's husband was on the line. He told the dispatcher that his wife had woken him up moments earlier, and what she said left him in shock. According to him, Pammy had come into the bedroom and admitted that Darnell was gone. She didn't mean missing, she meant something far worse. When he asked her what she had done, she only told him Darnell wasn't alive anymore. The details were sparse, and she didn't say how it happened, but the weight of her words hit him like a brick. He grabbed the phone to call 911, and that's when chaos broke out.
No. 905 North 905 Reed Avenue. He just told me. He just told me to kill us.
Okay.
In the background of the call, Pammy could be heard screaming. At one point, she tried to stop her husband from talking, even putting her hand over his mouth to silence him. The dispatcher struggled to understand everything, but one thing was clear: something terrible had happened to Darnell. Pammy's husband managed to tell the operator that she had confessed to killing the boy and was now trying to leave the house. While he was still on the phone, Pammy ran out the door. Her husband saw her grab the keys to their gray Jeep Cherokee and take off into the night. He told the dispatcher that she mentioned having a plan, but he didn't know what it was. He made it clear that he wasn't going to cover for her, saying he refused to go to jail for what she had done. The dispatcher asked him when he had last seen Darnell, and he admitted it had been earlier that day, around 10 a.m. before he left for work. When he got home late that night, he didn't check on Darnell. He had taken a shower and gone straight to bed, unaware that anything was wrong. It wasn't until Pammy woke him up that he realized something terrible had happened. When asked if Pammy had any medical history, he said she had dealt with depression and bipolar disorder in the past, but had been stable while taking her medication. He seemed bewildered, struggling to understand how things had spiraled so far. This kind of behavior, he said, was nothing like her usual self.
I said, what would you do? What did you do to him? She said he's not alive. And then when I tried to grab the phone to call you, she started fighting. Got up to check his room because I didn't get off work till 10:30, and I didn't see him tonight. I came straight home, took a shower, and went to bed. I didn't even check in on him because I usually don't when I get home because I want him to sleep. And now she's saying she just woke me up and just told me I got something serious to tell you. And I said, what? And that's what she told me. She's not here anymore.
And that's a female or a male? I'm sorry.
It's a
male.
boy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there any other children in the home?
No. She talked about something. She got a plan. I'm not going to jail for her.
Any diagnosed illnesses or anything that, or anything like that you know of?
She does have depression and bipolar disorder, but she has been taking medicine for it. She's been fine. She's been around plenty of children.
So this is completely out of character for her?
Very much so. She wakes me up. She wakes me up about 15 minutes ago and said, I got something serious to tell you. I said, what? She said, shut your phone off. Shut your phone off. So I shut the phone off and I said, what happened? She said, not here anymore. I said, well, what do you mean? Where did he go? Who is he with? She was like, he's not alive anymore.
So after that, the investigation began. Local police arrived at the house on Reeb Avenue in Columbus just minutes after Pammy's husband made the call. He repeated everything he had told the dispatcher, trying to give as much detail as he could. Officers started by searching the home to see if there were any signs of Darnell or Pammy. The place was tense, quiet, and unsettling. but there was no sign of the boy. Not long after, the Ohio State Highway Patrol and the Franklin County Sheriff's Office were notified to help in the search. Officers on foot, along with K-9 units, combed the area around the house. By 4 a.m., the Special Investigation Bureau joined the search. It was clear that this wasn't going to be a simple case. As time ticked by, officials decided to escalate things. Around 5 a.m., Columbus police requested that the Ohio State Highway Patrol send out an Amber Alert for Darnell. Soon, the Ohio State Highway Patrol sent out the first Amber Alert. The Amber Alert system came into play, but it didn't work the way it was supposed to. At first, it seemed like a crucial step in spreading the word and gathering public help, but soon the system showed cracks. Not all phones in the area received the alert, and the ones that didn't get any useful information. Instead of the details about Darnell, Pammy, and the gray Jeep Cherokee, people got a default message. The message just said, "Amber Alert in this area until February 14th, 6:28 a.m. EST. Execute action message from the state of Ohio." That was it. No names, no descriptions, nothing that could help the public identify Darnell or the suspect. This glitch caused frustration for local authorities. The alert was supposed to include critical information. Darnell's description as a 5-year-old black male with black hair and brown eyes, possibly wearing Spider-Man pajamas and white boots. It should have mentioned Pammy, too, a 47-year-old black female with brown hair and eyes, about 4 foot 9 inches tall, and last seen in a green floral nightgown and pink shoes. And, most importantly, it needed to highlight the gray Jeep Cherokee with the specific license plate Jigs. Instead, none of that was in the initial message. The issue seemed to be tied to recent changes in the Amber Alert system. The state had just switched from a 90-character limit for text messages to a 300-character limit, but the system hadn't been tested enough to handle real-life emergencies like this one. Because of the glitch, it took more than a half an hour before anyone realized what had happened. By then, it was too late to reach many phones in the central Ohio area where Darnell had been abducted. Once the error was discovered, officials worked to fix it. They sent the problem back to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, which handles Amber Alerts. A corrected alert was sent out after the initial mistake, this time including more details. But even then, the message didn't reach all the right places. The second alert went out to phones in Cuyahoga County and surrounding areas, but it left out phones in central Ohio, where the abduction had actually started. By the time the second alert reached the Cleveland area, Pammy's vehicle had already been located at the apartment complex in Brooklyn, Ohio. The delay in fixing the Amber Alert glitch meant precious time was lost. A license plate reader flagged the Jeep in the Cleveland area, about 2 hours from Columbus. It was now close to 6 a.m., and officers scrambled to respond. The vehicle was located at 5:50 a.m., parked at Parkview Estates, an apartment complex on Memphis Avenue in Brooklyn, Ohio, a suburb of Cleveland. When officers arrived at the complex, they found the Jeep, but Pammy and Darnell were nowhere to be found. The car was just sitting there, abandoned. This was the last solid lead the police had. Investigators issued a warrant for Pammy's arrest, charging her with first-degree felony kidnapping and first-degree felony child endangerment. Back in Columbus, the investigation was far from over. Local, state, and federal officials coordinated their efforts, combing through evidence and following every lead. Investigators spent hours at the May residence, collecting evidence and trying to piece together what had happened. Officers could be seen carrying items out of the house, but the details of what they found weren't immediately clear. Throughout it all, Pammy's husband fully cooperated with the investigation. He answered every question the police asked and provided all the information he could. As the hours passed, the urgency of the situation grew. Darnell was still missing, and Pammy seemed to have vanished into thin air. Columbus police made a public plea for help. They admitted they were working with very little information and said they needed the community's assistance. Officers promised to follow every lead until Darnell and Pammy were found, no matter how long it took. The search teams expanded the radius and checked every possible location. Despite the best efforts of law enforcement, the case had reached a critical point, and the clock was ticking. So after that, on the night of February 15th, Pammy's trail ended in an unusual and unexpected place. Around 9:30 p.m., workers at an envelope manufacturing business on Tiedemann Road in Brooklyn, Ohio, noticed a woman entering the building. Her appearance was striking. She wore a tan overcoat with a nightgown, had no shoes on, and looked completely out of place. The way she moved and her unsettled demeanor immediately caught their attention. She kept asking the workers to call her husband, repeating his name but refusing to provide any other details, including her own. When the workers couldn't reach the man she was asking for, they decided to call 911. During the call, the woman became increasingly upset, pleading for them to help her contact her husband. By the time the police arrived, she was distraught, crying, and overwhelmed. Officers quickly identified her as Pammy May.
Last night at 9:38 p.m., Brooklyn Police Department officers were dispatched to a business in the 4000 block of Tiedemann Road on a report of a woman walking suspiciously around the building. The responding officers identified the woman as Pammy May and took her into custody without incident.
Her strange behavior and emotional state left little doubt that they needed to act quickly. She was taken to a nearby hospital for treatment, and investigators seized the opportunity to get answers. At the hospital, detectives began interviewing Pammy, hoping to uncover what had happened to Darnell. What she revealed was chilling. She admitted outright to killing the child and showed no remorse. She described her growing frustration with Darnell, saying that their relationship had been strained for some time. She didn't feel they had the bond she expected, and her dissatisfaction with his behavior had escalated over time. This wasn't something she viewed as a spur-of-the-moment decision. Pammy described her actions as planned, something she had considered carefully. Pammy began explaining what had led to the horrific act. The night before, she had caught Darnell eating snacks in his bed. He had a granola bar and peanut butter crackers, and he'd even used a knife to open the packaging. That simple act enraged her. It wasn't the first time she had felt frustrated with him. She viewed his behavior as a pattern, something she couldn't accept, and that night, her anger boiled over. She explained how she waited until Darnell was napping. Then she entered his room with a trash bag. She suffocated him with the bag, tying it shut to ensure he couldn't escape. She described waiting, watching until he stopped moving. The act was cold and calculated, carried out with precision. Afterward, she placed his body in the trash bag and hid it in a closet in another part of the house. For several hours, Darnell's body remained in that closet. Pammy waited for her husband to come home, maintaining a facade of normalcy. When he finally arrived and went to bed, she made her next move. In the dead of night, when the house was silent, she retrieved Darnell's body and carried it to the family's Jeep. To avoid suspicion, she took the extra step of covering the vanity license plate with an old one. It was a deliberate attempt to disguise the vehicle. She drove to a neighborhood near her parents' home, searching for a place to dispose of Darnell's body. Eventually, she found what she was looking for, a manhole on Marsdale Avenue. She removed the cover and shoved the child's body into the sewer below. Once she was done, she drove back home as if nothing had happened. Hours later, her guilt or panic seemed to set in. Pammy woke her husband, intending to tell him what she had done. But when he reacted by calling 911, she tried to stop him. She physically fought him to keep him from making the call, even trying to cover his mouth. She then fled the house barefoot, wearing only her nightgown, and ended up at the manufacturing business, where workers eventually called the police. During her interview with investigators, Pammy described these events in detail. She provided specifics about her actions, from the suffocation to the disposal of the body. Detectives were stunned by how calmly she explained everything. as though it had all been a logical sequence of events. She even identified the exact location of the manhole she had used, pointing it out on a map of Columbus shown to her during the questioning. The level of detail in Pammy's confession painted a grim picture of her mindset. Her actions weren't impulsive or the result of a single moment of anger. They were calculated and deliberate, carried out with a disturbing level of forethought. Investigators realized that the hope of finding Darnell alive was gone. Her account confirmed their worst fears. The case had shifted from a desperate search for a missing child to the grim task of recovering his body and piecing together the events that led to his death. Pammy's confession provided law enforcement with the answers they needed, but it also raised more questions about what could drive someone to commit such a horrifying act. Pammy told police where they could find Darnell's body. She had left him in a sewer drain on Marsdale Avenue in southwest Columbus. Investigators acted quickly, and shortly after 1 a.m. on Friday, they found him. It was a tragic confirmation of what they already feared. By 1:30 p.m., Darnell's biological parents were notified that a body believed to be their child had been recovered. The formal identification process was heartbreaking. Family members confirmed it was Darnell by looking at post-mortem photos. Shortly after, the Amber Alert for him was canceled. The news spread quickly, leaving the community in shock. People who had been holding on to hope now had to face the harsh reality of what had happened to the little boy. Pammy didn't stay at the hospital for long. By Sunday, February 18th, she was booked into the Cuyahoga County Jail. She faced charges of kidnapping and child endangerment. Authorities began the process of formally charging her with homicide and preparing her for extradition back to Columbus, where the crime had taken place. The autopsy report revealed horrifying details about Darnell's death. He had died from asphyxiation caused by smothering and cervical neck compression. The report noted that his neck had been crushed during the act. His body showed signs of decomposition, and there was alcohol in his system. It wasn't clear if the alcohol came from ingestion, medication like cough syrup, or if it was a byproduct of decomposition. Darnell had also choked on the contents of his stomach at the time of his death. There were other injuries as well. The report detailed bruises on his face and ear, bleeding in his eyes, and scars on his head and other parts of his body. These findings painted a grim picture of the abuse and trauma he had endured. The sewer drain where Darnell's body had been discarded soon became a sight of mourning. Neighbors and strangers began leaving toys, balloons, candles, and stuffed animals there to honor his memory. The tribute grew over the following days, a small but heartfelt gesture to ensure he wasn't forgotten. By February 21st, Pammy was extradited back to Columbus and placed in the Franklin County Jail. Authorities officially charged her with homicide. Her arraignment was brief but tense. Pammy appeared in court wearing a beige jumpsuit. She didn't show any emotion, staring blankly ahead throughout the 3-minute video hearing. The judge set her bond at $4 million.
Pammy May, 24 CR 1073. Mrs. May has been indicted for 1 count of aggravated murder, unclassified felony, 3 counts of tampering with evidence, felonies in the 3rd degree, and 1 count of gross abuse of a corpse, a felony in the 5th degree. It's my understanding, Your Honor, that she was given a $4 million bond in her initial appearance. The state would request that be maintained here, and I could certainly read the facts of the case, Your Honor, if this court would like to hear them.
On February 27th, a grand jury indicted her on several serious charges. These included aggravated homicide, 3 counts of tampering with evidence, and abuse of a corpse. Through her attorney, Samuel Szymanski, Pammy entered a plea of not guilty to all charges. The bond set earlier at $4 million remained unchanged. At the arraignment, her attorney asked the judge to consider moving Pammy from the Franklin County Jail to a secure psychiatric facility. He explained that the case would center on her mental health. This was not going to be a typical criminal trial, but one rooted in Pammy's struggles with mental illness. Later, on March 25th, Pam appeared in court again. Her attorney provided an update, stating that she was competent to stand trial. However, he also mentioned that her plea might change in the future. Instead of not guilty, she might plead not guilty by reason of insanity. To support this, requested a mental health evaluation for Pammy, which was still under consideration. As the legal proceedings moved forward, more details about Pammy's mental health came to light. A prosecutor from Franklin County, Tyler McCoy, mentioned that Pammy had a history of bipolar disorder and schizophrenia. She also exhibited possessive and controlling behaviors in the past. These issues were being evaluated as part of the case. However, former Franklin County prosecutor Ron O'Brien explained that pleading insanity in a criminal trial is not an easy defense to prove. He pointed out that under the law, anyone claiming insanity must demonstrate two things. First, they need to show they have a mental illness or defect. Second, they must prove that, as a result of their condition, they couldn't distinguish between right and wrong at the time of the crime. Pammy's case presented challenges for such a defense. The prosecutors noted that she had confessed to her husband about killing Darnell. This confession showed a level of awareness about her actions. She also went to great lengths to cover up the crime, including hiding the body and fleeing the scene. These actions could indicate that she understood what she did was wrong, which might make it harder to argue insanity successfully. By May, Pammy was scheduled to appear in court again, but her hearing was delayed. Up till now, there hadn't been any major updates in her case. The trial is still pending, and key details haven't been made public yet. It remained unclear whether Pammy would stick to her not guilty plea, change it to an insanity plea, or consider a plea agreement as part of the proceedings. For now, the case remains in a holding pattern, with Pammy legally considered innocent until proven guilty in court. As the weeks and months progress, more information may come to light, potentially shaping the outcome of what has already become a deeply troubling case. In the end, justice may come in a courtroom, but Darnell's legacy lives on in the hearts of those who mourn him. May his story never be forgotten, and may it inspire us all to look out for the children who depend on us to ensure their safety and happiness.